veteran's voice, stories that deserve to be heard, is proudly sponsored by Calling Gilbert, Wright & Carter.
My name is Shane Johnson, United States Marine Corps, 98-02, E4, Corporal, and this is my story. I grew up in Arcadia, Florida, so around the Gulf Coast area, Sarasota, Bradenton, inland. It's predominantly an orange grove and cow town. And ever since I was young, I wanted to be part of the Marine Corps. My father was, a correctional officer, very disciplined in everything that we did each day. We were always up at 4 or 5 in the morning, getting prepped and prepared. So when you grow up in a small town, there's not a whole lot of options. My dad was a single dad. We were raising, my handicapped brother. He was blind at the time. Well, he still is blind. Taking care of my sister and helping my dad while he was working double jobs. It was a lot of sense of responsibility at that young age. So honestly, I just wanted to get out. It was rather than go to college. I was pretty naive as far as what college was involved. Had I known about Citadel or different other schools, I probably would have tried to go that route. But I knew that the Marine Corps was the toughest, the hardest, and the fastest route out of a small town. So I decided to join the Marine Corps 3 days after I graduated high school. So the Marine Corps for me I loved it. I actually still have letters where I wrote back talking about this is the greatest place ever. The reason why is my dad would work me like a dog. So to go to the Marine Corps was easy. I prepared and planned for it for a really long time. I actually dropped out of high school football because I didn't want to get hurt. I wanted to make sure I had that opportunity. I really wanted to get away from a small town. It was my escape, to be honest with you. My Marine Corps career was, I would say, picture perfect. I was very fortunate. I went into boot camp 3 days after high school. I graduated honor grad. I was number 1 out of my class. When we graduated, I was meritoriously promoted to private first class. I went to infantry. I went to School of Infantry first. I was meritoriously promoted again to Lance Corporal. So I'd made 3 promotions by the time I had actually gotten to the fleet. When I got to the fleet, my first duty station was 29 Palms. So it's kind of funny. It's one of the worst duty stations you can get when you're in the Marine Corps. But when I was sitting on the East Coast, they said, "Hey, you're going to go to California," and I just thought to myself, "California, like the movies. Like I'm ready to go. Like this is going to be great. Hollywood. Everything's going to be wonderful coming from a small town." I hadn't even been on an elevator or saw snow or anything of that nature. So I was pretty pumped about that. But the Marine Corps gets you good. They bring you into Palm Springs. You fly into Palm Springs. So I was feeling pretty pumped. Number 1 in my class, meritoriously promoted. I was selected by my peers is how I got promoted. So for some reason they thought I could lead. I still think I have a problem with that today. But at the time they believed in me, so it was pretty cool. I arrived in Palm Springs at nighttime, and when you're 18 years old coming from a small town, you get to Palm Springs, it's like lights, it's like Vegas. The cab drivers are driving Mercedes, and I thought, man, I had done the smartest move in the world. I was just laughing at everybody. But then there's this really long 2 or 3 hour drive in the dark that they take you on. And for some reason, those lights started to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and a new set of lights came up, and that happened to be 29 Palms. So you get in there at nighttime. It's a big base. At nighttime it lights up pretty good. And woke up the next morning, walked outside of my barracks and realized, what the heck have I done? There literally was like 29 Palms and just a patch of grass that if you walk on, you'll just get murdered by anybody that's around there. So that was my first experience in the Marine Corps as far as don't always believe everything you read. So I had a great opportunity, got there. I was with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. It was the infantry division. They're the most combat deployed unit. When I first got there, I was a Lance Corporal, so they thought I came from Bahrain. So I didn't get hazed as much or messed with when I first got there. I actually got a lot of responsibility right off the bat. And then the higher-ups started to figure out that I was just as a boot as everyone else, and then I got it even worse. So it was an interesting time serving there. I served 2 years there with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, maybe about a year and a half. And then we went to Okinawa, came back, and then I went to 1st Reconnaissance Battalion in Camp Pendleton. I took the NDOC, passed the NDOC, and went up there for at the time they had a on-job training program for reconnaissance. So I was attached to Headquarters Battalion in 1st Recon. And that's pretty much the gist of, I served my term of 4 years. While I was serving with Recon, we were going through a pre-scuba and getting prepared to go into what they call RIP. And as I was coming off the back of the base, we finally had some liberty. So we were getting messed with a lot. And I was getting ready to come off the back of the base, and I had a motorcycle, and it was the first time we had any kind of liberty for 3 or 4 days. And they said, you can get out of here. So I DD'd him out. I was gone, got on my motorcycle. head out the back of the base. When you get out the back, you know, when you go through the Marine Corps base, you got all your gear on. But when you get off the base, you got to put your tank top on. You know, sun's out, guns out. You got to get all prepped in case you see, you know, any ladies along the ride. So I was going out to a buddies of mine in Corona. Took my gear off, got my stuff situated, and as I was coming on the back of Fallbrook, California, I was going over a hill. There was a driving lane and then a turning lane that goes left. And what ended up happening is as I was going down that lane, a car came over and hit me when I was driving about 45 miles an hour. I came off my motorcycle and I caught the corner of a brick house about 45 miles an hour across my chest. And I snapped my chest plate in half, my collarbone, my shoulder blade, broke my hand. When that happened, all my ribs shattered. And when my ribs shattered, it punctured all of my major organs. And then it went into my lungs. And it put in 3 50-cent size whole pieces into my lungs. And it was some gang members, so it was intentional. When they hit me, they robbed me. So I was laying on the ground. I had sliced my bicep open from the car mirror, and I was bleeding out. And I believe your body holds about 6 pints, and I had lost 4 pints. And I was holding my bicep. Ironically, the thing I had spent the most money on was my helmet, which was a smart move considering being a Marine. So we're already hard-headed as it is, so the helmet definitely helped out a lot. It didn't knock me out, which I thought was interesting. I remember everything to the T of hitting the ground. My body was like jello when they were pulling on, you know, my wallet and my chain, and nobody would help me. It was in a bad neighborhood, and apparently it was a very well-known gang that nobody wanted to get involved with. So I had to get up and walk 2 blocks to a fire station. And as I was walking 2 blocks to that fire station, I was taking 1 full breath every 60 seconds, is what the doctor was telling me. And I was also bleeding out on my arm, so I was holding the blood and trying to get there. When I got to a fire station, there happened to be a doctor on site. I kind of showed up on one knee and blood all over the ground, and the doctor came out and they brought in a bay flight. And as I was kind of getting in the helicopter, I remember having my eyes closed, and there was a young lady in the background. I could hear her, and I kept cussing, but I kept apologizing. You know, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cuss. And she was like, sweetie, you can say whatever you want to. You know, my father always raised me very respectful when it comes to things like that, so I wasn't one that probably said more than 5 cuss words, which again is weird for a Marine, and I didn't drink, which again is weird for a Marine. But I was fully focused on my career. I wanted to make my dad proud. I wanted to make everyone else proud. I wanted to make sure that, you know, as I moved up in the ranks that I did really well. So when I was in that helicopter, the doctor decided they had to cut me. They had to run chest tubes into me to get me to breathe. I probably had to say out of most of everything, I was probably the most painful. Because you don't have any kind of medication, they can't give you anything, so they took a scalpel, probably, you know, about this size here, blade, and sliced me open. And they cut me open, and they ran a tube about the size of your thumb through, and you know your rib cage has a layer of skin that goes over it, and they had to bust through that as your ribs were just crackling and crumbling. And I remember watching my chest just expand like Stretch Armstrong. As I looked down, the fluid just kept building. It was insane. And they cut me when they did, man. He ran that tube in there, just blood and water and everything just flew all over the place. So I ended up getting 3 chest tubes. I lost 54 pounds in 2 weeks, had to learn how to walk, talk, and breathe again. Most people ask me that infamous question, you know, when I flatlined, because I'd gotten there and I'd flatlined as soon as I went down. They brought me back, flatlined again, they brought me back, flatlined again, they brought me back. Apparently I didn't want to leave. Or I was trying to, they wouldn't let me, I guess, maybe. And, you know, everyone says, did you see God? You know, what was that epic moment? And you know, I didn't. I had a moment where my father was in there with my uncle, and I looked at my dad and I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. Like, I mean, and I said that, it would, you know, strap down the tubes all over the place, you know, just the pain was unbelievable. I mean, I just can't, even still now I can feel it sometimes talking about it. And I had a moment, you know, where I just told my dad, I was like, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. I just can't, this is tough, you know. My dad, I remember kind of that out-of-body experience, and he's beating on my chest, you know, and I've got blood pouring out of my mouth. They had to run kind of like you do at the dentist just to keep the blood from going in. And I had a moment, like just a second. It wasn't like anybody, figure came down and talked to me, but I had a choice. I said, man, you can let go, and there's no pain. And literally during that time period, I felt no pain, you know, nothing. And it said, or you can stay, and you're going to feel a tremendous amount of pain, and things are going to be really rough for you. So I was like, well, man, I'm so young. I'm 21 years old. You know, I think I just turned 21, or was getting ready to, and I was got so much to do. I wanted to bodybuild. I wanted to, you know, I still wanted to finish with recon and serve my term at the time. There was, you know, go to school. I had all these accomplishments and goals. You know, I was very goal-oriented at a very young age. So I said, I don't think I want to let go. So I said, you know, whatever it was, I said, cool, all right, here we go. Rock and roll. Pulled me back in and said, here comes the pain. and it was pretty painful. So I spent 3 months in the hospital in total. I was in critical care, ICU, went back in. They couldn't even take me to a military hospital for the longest time. And then they finally got me back to the military hospital. And I got back with the recon, first recon, and I was in rehab time period. Now the thing is when you collapse your lungs, they can't put you under for any type of surgery because you'll die. And you really can't do much going into reconnaissance because you can't go in the dive chamber or jump out of planes or do anything because of your lung capacity and the issues that you would have with your lungs. So my lungs were scarred really, really bad, which crushed a lot of potential dreams I had for my military career. And so I got back to my unit and I just started training. You know, I'd worked out my whole life. My father was a big, advocate of that, exercising and working out. So I got back into the gym, and long story short, I got out in 2002 and I was 100% healed. I collected 0 VA disability, didn't get anything for it, did my term, was completely healed up. Spent a lot of time in the pool, a lot of time working out, rehabbed myself. There wasn't really any rehab. So I stayed with my unit and continued to train and train and train. And that's my military career. This is probably the time where I think a lot of veterans, when we get into the discussion about transition issues and stuff, where maybe things were a little different for me. I came back and my first thing was to go to school. I think that's a pretty canned response for most military because they really push that GI Bill. So, when you grow up, someone who has an education is considered far more superior as far as success is concerned, especially when you grow up in a small town because that's the thing that's pushed the most. And, my family, my dad didn't have one, my mom didn't have one, but my uncle was a CPA and he was very successful. So that was kind of predominantly like, hey, if I get this degree, this is where I could go. I went to school, I went to community college. Again, I didn't do bad in high school. I just wasn't really focused. I was on the Future Business Leaders of America program and was more of a worker than I really was in academia. So I decided to go to school. I applied for school. I went the first day and the teacher showed up 30 minutes late and I just was like, nope, this isn't gonna work for me. And I left school. So I went to the workforce. So I did what I thought I was supposed to do. So my father was a correctional officer. I knew I didn't want to do that, and I knew I didn't want to move back to my small town. So I moved to Tampa, Largo area, probably St. Pete, Tampa, Largo area. I bounced around between there. And at the time, the girl I was dating was, hey, you're gonna have to get a real job. So it took me about 60 days to kind of really get focused. And back then, you used to fax all of your resumes, right? And so I got my resume together. I built it myself, researched it, studied it. And put my resume together and started sending them out. I was selling gym memberships at the time. Fitness was a big part of my life, so I was getting involved in sales. So I understood the importance of sales, overcoming objections, making phone calls, working long hours. Those things didn't really bother me, but again, the income wasn't reflecting the amount of hours worked. So I finally got a phone call from 2 potential opportunities. One was a manager at Boston Market, the chicken place, and the other one was with a mortgage company. And I'll be completely honest with you, I did not know the difference between the two. I just knew that if I had an opportunity to wear a tie to work each day and that I had an opportunity for growth and a small salary and something where I could move up, that was way more than what my dad had done. And not saying that my dad did anything bad, it just felt like without a college education and military career, it was a great opportunity for me. I mean, it's not like we get paid a ton of money in the military, so it was a plus. I was gonna take it. I actually ended up taking the mortgage job, not really understanding. The interview I went to, I sat down with was my lifetime mentor and friend now. And I'll never forget the day, right? So it's in Clearwater. I walk into this big office, all these guys are on the phones and they're pounding the phones. And my bank account was negative, like $180. And I had no money. So I ran it overdraft. So it used to be we'd do it for alcohol or protein shakes or whatever in the military. But I did it this time to buy like a little outfit. So I got me a tie, got my shirt, I cleaned it up. That's a good thing about the Marine Corps, they teach you how to do that. So I prepped it, got it all ready to go, and I was ready to go on this interview. Very confident in it, didn't have any fears or concerns. And I walked in and I sat down in front of him and he says, tell me a little bit about yourself. So I went into that story. He gets back into it and it says, okay, let me tell you about this company and what we can do. So he brought in his top guy and the explanation was a pay stub, and the pay stub had a $63,000 payout on it. And I was like, oh, he makes that a year. And he said, no, he just made that this month. And I looked at him and I said, are we street pharmaceutical sales reps here? Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't understand. Like, this doesn't sound legal. Like, a person can actually make $63,000 in a month. You know, and mind you, I grew up in an environment where that was probably triple, you know, my father's income at the time, you know, working, you know, hours and hours and hours and hours, you know. And he said, no. And I said, so you're telling me all I got to do is get on the phones in the air conditioning and talk to people, and this is the kind of money I can make? And he said, yes. And at the time, I mean, look, you're 22, 23 years old. You've never seen this kind of money before. That comes really important. Because listen, I've learned later over life, money isn't everything, but it's right up there with oxygen. It's pretty important, you know. So I knew that I could help my family. I knew, I mean, this was going to change my life. So I said, all right, well, I want the job. And he says, well, if you can overcome this one objection, you can get the job. So I said, okay. So he says, I'm not interested. I got to go talk to my wife, right? And that objection. And I was like, man, we just trained on this at the gym place. I was like, this has worked out dream. So I turned the phone around and I looked at him and I said, imagine how your wife would feel when you're driving home telling her how you helped the family save thousands of dollars monthly, over $100,000 over the lifetime of the loan, all because you made a great decision and gave them peace of mind. Don't you know that's priceless? And he said, great, you're hired. And I was like, man, I'm so glad we went over that training a couple of weeks ago. So I got the job and I started in the mortgage business, and now that's been 15, 16 years ago. I've been doing mortgages ever since. That first month I made $66,000. I beat the top rep in my first month. And a lot of funny stories, but this one's always, I tell this in my public speaking when I speak to businesses. When I got that check, my account was so negative for so long, they almost put my account in collections. And I didn't have, I didn't know what to do, right? So I was so naive that I took it to a check cash place because I needed the cash deposited into the bank account so I could have access to it. I knew that much, right? When you're broke, you know all kinds of ways to manipulate the money to get to it as quickly as possible. Apparently, I wasn't smart enough to know that I could just take the check to the originating bank and probably pay $5 in cash in. But I took it to a check cash place. I paid 18% on $66,000. But you know what? I didn't even care. Like, I was so happy, but I felt like a drug dealer because when I walked out of the check cash place, I had all this cash in a little envelope and I didn't know what to do with it, you know? And I didn't have any friends that made that kind of money. I didn't have any mentors really made that kind of money. So not like I could call anybody and say, hey, what do I do with this money? Because they're probably going to want some and they're going to try to, I might have to loan everybody something. Because magically everybody comes up with some bills or some debts or great business ideas when you start making money. So I stuffed it in my truck. Was like, all right, well, what do I do? So I take it to the bank. And let me tell you something, the bank is really nice when you put money in. When you don't have any, they're not that nice. But when you show up with like $55,000 in cash, like they take you to a special room. You go to a little room, they've got little waters, little snacks. They call you Mr. Johnson. Like they don't just, you know, not look at you and be like, oh, your account's negative. You know, it's a completely different environment. So I deposited my money and I literally had no idea what to do with it. I was really, really excited. I didn't have a whole lot of friends because everybody was kind of doing their own thing. And, you know, what do you do? Call your friends and say you made a whole bunch of, you know, nobody ever believes you. So that was an interesting day. So I paid a lot of money for that cash, but I was very, very, very excited about it. And that year I did exceptionally well in that business. I was number one. I was promoted about 6 months later to running a branch in Laguna Beach, California. That was a rough time, not gonna lie. It wasn't, it was at Laguna Beach. So it was a great time in my career. So that's kind of what happened right after my military career. I am the type of person, I'm different than most military. And I say that, well, I say that because maybe how the military has looked in the public eye. See, I'm thankful for the military. It didn't care where I came from. It didn't care what my grades were. It didn't care whether I was fat or skinny. It didn't care if I was blue, black, green, or yellow. It didn't care if my family was poor or rich. It was the largest dominating corporation in the world for the best country in the world with open arms that said, come in, we'll pay you, we'll teach you, and we'll give you respect that you'll have for life. In corporate America now, where can you go in any job in the world that will do that for you? That will give you respect forever? That no matter whether you meet someone that's been served for 4 years or 40 years and there's 70 years difference, that they automatically have that respect for each other, that camaraderie, that bond. I mean, there's nothing out there like that. So to me, the military gave me this wonderful opportunity to build, develop, whether I was in infantry or not. It taught me leadership, responsibility, time. I mean, these are all great things my dad taught me early on. So again, it was easier for me. But at the same time, when I came out to the working world, I didn't have a problem. I had confidence. I had just died 3 times. I had just experienced an opportunity to have life for a second chance. I didn't want to go back to being poor. I didn't want to go back to, the struggles of growing up in a single wide trailer. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just, you have 2 different choices in life. You can pick one or pick the other. And I chose to go to a different route because, I think poor people are the greediest. And I say that in the sense that everybody has the opportunity. This is America, right? It's the greatest country in the world. You can do whatever you want. I mean, you can build anything. You can literally be anything you want in this country. And to waste away that opportunity because you feel like somebody or something owes you something, I don't know. I mean, I served in the Marine Corps too, and I know everything that I had in the Marine Corps, I had to earn it. I had to earn everything. Not one single thing was just handed to me. I had to earn it. So I just thought to myself, I'll keep it simple, right? I'm not the smartest person in the world. Keep it simple, stupid. When I get to the civilian sector, maybe it works the same way. Maybe I got to earn it. Maybe I have to start from the bottom because you know what? In the Marine Corps, it doesn't matter, right? In the military, it doesn't matter. I could be a E4, E5, and if I'm on, duty and I have to go clean because a higher rank tells me, I just got to go do it. It's just the way that it works, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't want to be a part of that, and I wanted to have the opportunity to excel. I believe it's a socialist system defending a capitalist system. Everybody's the same. But it gives you everything you need to be extremely successful. So when I got out, I knew one thing I had to remember: never quit, never quit, never quit, never quit. House wasn't going to stop me. Marine Corps wasn't going to stop me. My family wasn't going to stop me. Hurricane isn't going to stop me. Nothing's going to stop me. It's just going to continue to go because I know the alternative is what? I don't want to go back to the alternative. So I went through the mortgage business and did really, really well. I made a lot of money. I helped a lot of people, helped my family. And when I go back to saying that poor people are the greedy ones, the reason why I say that is because when you make money or you become successful, not necessarily monetarily, you can help so many more people. I mean, I never really thought of that concept because of the way I grew up. I just thought money's bad or making money's bad or being successful is bad because that means you can't enjoy your life. And I've always been the type of person, my dad said, I would always ask why. Why can't I have both? Why do I have to pick one or the other? And then I got this millions of dollars worth of training in the most elite unit in the entire world. I've got to do something with it. And so I just kept it simple, just like the military taught me. I mean, I went through a couple of years. I made a lot of money, and then the Great Recession happened, right? So I opened up my first business when I was 26 years old, opened up a mortgage company. I had done really well at the other mortgage companies and decided I wanted to break free on my own. I had no idea about what I was doing, I'll be honest with you. But I knew I didn't want to work for someone else. It was something else the military taught me. I didn't want Big Brother to have their finger on me. I wanted to build, expand with my own ideas. I wanted to grow. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to inspire other people. I wanted to hire other people. I wanted to change the world, right? And so I opened up my first business at 26. I did it back in my small town with my uncle as my partner as a CPA. Thought that would be a great idea to have that around. And we did really well the first year. We crushed it, and it was pretty exciting. It was a good time, and it was a great experience for me as far as building a business is concerned. And then 2008, we had the Great Recession, and in the mortgage business, everything shut down. So, I mean, you'd come in and imagine just your job dissipating, gone. Like it doesn't even exist anymore. And that's literally what it was like. It was another challenge. I lost $1 million in homes. I lost my car. I lost all my money. I lost my businesses. And I pretty much got to the point where I would say homeless, but I was living in other people's homes to get by. The mortgage business, I had worked a lot of hours, 100-hour weeks, I mean, just all day, every day. It was a natural high, but it did take a lot out on you at the time. So I packed all my stuff up and I moved. I went to South Carolina. And that's when things got pretty tough. I tried to go back to school again because I wanted to maybe kind of rethink. Went through some experiences with that, got back into selling personal training just for a brief stint. The licensing laws changed, so when I lost my homes and lost everything, my license was gone, so I couldn't do mortgages anymore. And that was a tough time. I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty bad. going from here and having that and then losing your businesses, your homes, and everything that you have and that you worked so hard for. But I didn't quit, right? So I kept going, pushed through, lived in Charleston for a bit, had some pretty crazy experiences. I was selling gym memberships, went back to selling some gym memberships at the time just to make some side money. Was sleeping on couches, sleeping in the gym, up at 4 in the morning, working until 11 o'clock at night. I mean, my work ethic never stopped. I mean, no matter what. And I didn't think I was special because I had made a bunch of money. I just, went to work. That's what I needed to do. I was taking care of my sister and my nephew at the time. My nephew has a disease where his body doesn't produce, I want to say it's some type of growth hormone. He was just an infant at the time. My sister had gotten on drugs and done some pretty bad stuff, and her husband had hung himself with fishing wire, decapitated himself. So she was a single mom trying to get through all of that and doing her thing. So I was basically raising my nephew at the time with no money. I was sleeping on the floor of the little apartment I had, and because I didn't have any furniture. And my sister would be gone, disappear, and my nephew would start asphyxiating, turning blue. I'd lost my car. So I didn't have a vehicle, so I walked everywhere, which is kind of ironic. Later on, I'll talk about that. But so I was taking care of my nephew. He was turned blue. I'd have to, call the ambulance, come in. It was a difficult time, and I was barely making any money. Any money I had would go to help her, help him. Again, I'd lost everything. So the plus is when you lose everything, you don't have any bills. So I went through that experience. And after I had gotten this opportunity for a while, I was probably there maybe about 8 months, 9 months, and I had gotten an opportunity to go to Charlotte to work for Yodel, an online advertising company. And they did the job interview was to sell the proposal, the presentation, or what they call the value proposition to them over the phone. So that's been my thing. I cut my teeth when I did mortgages. That's what I did. I made 300 dials a day, 300 to 400 dials a day, calling and just cold calling. So we'd call out of phone books or call out of cold leads. So it's one of the things that's been a plus in all my businesses now. So I got on the phone, started talking to them. By the time I was done, the guy said, "Hey, this position we were going to give you, but we should pay you more." So I nailed it. And they said, "Well, we need you to move to Charlotte." But I didn't have a car. So one of my keys to business strategy success is act as if. So I was like, of course I have a car. I'll be right up there. So I ran out. I went to a car dealership, and I had just enough history to purchase a car, and I had $500 left to my name. So I said, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go purchase the car, put the $500, put everything in my car. I'm gonna move up there, work, and I'll get everything situated. I'll just transfer my apartment. I had it all planned out. So I did just that. Got a new car. And let me tell you something. When you haven't had a car in like 2 or 3 years and you finally get one, it's like the best thing in the world. So, I mean, you can go to the store. It takes like 5 minutes versus 5 hours. So I was pretty excited about that. And I got the car, moved with a buddy of mine. We went up to Charlotte, North Carolina. I remember the trailer broke down on the side of the road. We had to get it fixed. We got up there, got situated. So it was like my first week on the job. And I was really excited. So I showed up the first day early, ready to go, fired, wired, and inspired. Walked into the company. And they had us, start training, get on your phones and doing sales. And I crushed it, man. Like I was like #1 rep in the training. Like, I was pretty excited starting to make some money. So it's my first day. I'm sitting there and the car company calls me, right? And I have to go down, and the building's like a pyramid. It was an all glass pyramid. So everybody could see out, but nobody could see in, right? So everybody saw. So I came in, and of course my resume looks like I'm a baller, right? I've accomplished all these things, these sales and everything, but people didn't know that I was broke as a joke. So I, in my car, the guy calls me, says, the finance company calls me and says, "Hey, we're getting ready to fund your car, finalize all the paperwork and everything. We just want to confirm your job." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I actually switched jobs. I'm still in sales, but I've got a different job. I'm actually making more money as a salary versus commission." I mean, I was trying to sell the fire out of it. And they said, "Well, you changed line of work." And like in the mortgage business, I know what that means. Like that's the kiss of death. Like you never want to do that. They'd kill a loan. But I was like, but it's still sales, right? So I spent like 35 minutes trying to sell this girl on. It was like the one time I could not close. And she said, "I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to come get the car. We can't fund it." So imagine, it's your first day at your new job, right? Everyone's like, "Ooh, this guy's coming in sale. They promoted me per se. I'm in there in an all glass building," and they come and take the car. So I had a gym bag, luckily at the time, put all my stuff in the gym bag. Went back up there, they took the car. So I just went back to selling, doing my thing. I waited till everybody left. It was like about 8 o'clock at night. And I had to walk home. It was about 6 miles. So I didn't know anyone, didn't really have any friends, and of course I was too, prideful to ask for help. So I walked 6 miles to my apartment. It was a long day. It was a really long day. And then I realized, wait, I got to be back at work tomorrow morning, so I got to walk 6 miles back. And I did that for a while. I was there super early. I'd be up at 4 in the morning. We had to be at work at 7. So I had to walk. They had a little on-site gym. So I took my clothes, would walk, change, get ready for work. That was a good time. So I went through that experience. I lost my job at that company about 6 or 7 months into it. And I'm the type of person, when I lose my heart in something, I probably should just never work for companies. That's why I'm an entrepreneur now. It just didn't work well with me. And I had a little apartment. I had nothing in it. Was taking care of my sister again and my nephew, like trying to support every bit of money I had going through that. I remember when I got my first check again, I had to take a taxi cab, but I didn't have any money because the taxi cab had to take me to the bank. So I didn't have any money to get a taxi, but I knew that I could cash the check when he got me to the bank. It was on a Saturday. So the guy took me all the way over there. I had to cash it. It was like $150 just to get there. It was a complete nightmare. I always said if I ever become really successful, I want to partner with Dunkin' Donuts, because I lived off of their like dollar sandwich wraps for like probably a year. I'd buy 2 of them because it was all the money I had, and I'd have them for breakfast and lunch every day, and I'd use their internet because it was like right by my apartment. So Dunkin' Donuts, if you're watching, give me a call, I'll hook you up. And it was a crazy experience. I mean, there's so many stories that go with that of trials and tribulations and overcoming obstacles. And in 2010, I got some mail, which I hate the mail because it's never good. I got the mail and I owed the IRS $175,000. When I was younger, I had made a buttload of money and did not know what to do with it, and listened to everybody, and they were like, hey, file exempt, you'll get more money. And I mean, I was 23, I didn't have any financial advice, I didn't know, and I did it. And so I go through all of this, I lose my car, I'm walking back and forth to my job, I lose my income, I lose my house, I lose my life, I'm pretty much down, I'm taking care of my nephew, and then I get this letter in the mail, right? And it's so scary, because I'm thinking, man, I'm going to prison. Like, I'm about to become somebody's girlfriend in prison, I guess like a white collar girlfriend, I'm not sure. But I was really, really scared about that. I didn't know what to do. I had no clue. And I knew the only way to make money was to get back in the mortgage business again, because I was good at it. So I quit my job. Well, I got fired from my job, and I got on unemployment for like $700 a month. And I started studying about getting back into the mortgage industry again. And I studied and studied and studied and studied and studied and studied. And this was now you had to take licensing, and there was a bunch you had to do. And I was taking care of my nephew, and it was a hot mess. But I studied for 6 weeks, and I passed the test. Had to come up with the money, raise the money to put in for my licensing for the North Carolina Commissioner of Banks, and they denied my license because of my credit. So that sucked. So I had to go and appeal it, and I had my nephew with me. Had to rent a car from Enterprise Rent-A-Car. They ran like a $10 a day weekend program. It was awesome. And I'd walk like 5 miles to there to get it. It was perfect for like $30. I could have a car a weekend. So I rented, went there, appealed it, and they put me on restrictions. So I had all these collections. And they said, well, you got to pay these in order for you to maintain your license. And I'm like, but I got to get a job and get the license in order to do that. I had no idea what I was going to do. So I got on with a mortgage company, and they said that they'd give me about 30 or 60 days of selling to get my license back on track. So I sold probably like $30,000 worth of income that first month, right, to get paid. And the company merged with another company and shut down. And then I lost all my money. And I still had to pay the collections, because if I didn't, they were going to yank my license. So I was doing whatever I could to make money. And I finally got the bus, at that time, public transportation. And Charlotte, it snows, right? So if you're from Florida, it never snows here. It's just hot all the time. So I didn't have any clothes for that. And I used to take the bus, and it would take me about 2 hours to get back and forth to work. And I would stand out in the snow with just like work clothes on. I didn't have anything. I literally had nothing else. And I put socks over my hands. I'd figured out to put socks, typical Marine. I'd put socks over my hands. I'd hide it. I had enough change and a knife on me just in case. I guess I was going to shank somebody if they came after me. But I was prepped and prepared and ready to go. And right after that happened, there was many days I walked to work in the rain. I got wet. It was very struggling days. There was a part where it took me through a really bad part of the neighborhood of Charlotte. And I would stand there probably about 4 in the morning, right? I'd hear gunshots and just crazy stuff. And I'd watch the homeless fight across the street. And I remember sitting there going, man, you can go from making all this money to nothing to sitting here watching the homeless fight. And I used to read books. So I stopped watching TV, right? I didn't have any money, so I didn't watch anything. I just started reading books every day. And I just made a decision to kind of really, really reinvent myself. So I studied every day. I read every day. I'd pick success, entrepreneurial books, everything. And I mean, that's all I did all day, every day. Teach myself, teach myself, teach myself. Everything I've done is pretty much self-taught. And I started reading the most successful people I could think of, their autobiographies, overcoming objection sales books, entrepreneurship, everything. Because I knew I did not want to live this life anymore. And there was a saying in one of the books that I read by Felix Dennis, and it said, doing handstands on the rim of hell. And it really made me think about that quote when I was standing across from the homeless because they're fighting. And I'm like, wow, I am literally like on the other side of the road, only about 8 feet from that situation. Now, look, I didn't get into drugs or drinking. I've never been that way. I've never done it. It's just not me. So I don't want to sit here and say I got really, really depressed and I started drinking because that just wasn't, for one, I didn't have any money. So that wasn't going to happen. I just wanted to eat some food. I was lucky to do that. But ultimately, I never had kind of a woe is me moment where I'm going to crawl into a hole. I just probably had more of a pause in life of what we call regrouping. And I took a step back and started really picking my priorities. And then I got, I guess, angry and was like, you know what, man, I'm a Marine. You know what? I've got to stand up for other people. People look up to me. I've got to push forward. I can't sit back and cry like a little baby. I got to make this happen. And I started reading those books and I was watching the homeless and I said, you know what, one day I'm going to put something together where I'm going to help those guys out because you know what, that could be me right there. And it's a choice, right? It's a choice you make. You can sit and stay in that woe is me state and crybaby state and say, well, I'm going to be here and I hope more people help me. Or you can realize the type of person you are. You are a United States Marine. You are a military veteran. A military veteran stands up when the others are going to fall. You push forward when the other ones are going to pull back. And we seem to forget that for some odd reason when we get out in the civilian world. Now we open arms and say everyone will help us. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't people out there that don't need help. There's a tremendous amount of people who need help. But there's also a tremendous amount of people that need to accept responsibility for their actions, pick up, buck up, and make it happen. Read a book, put the Netflix down, start studying, start helping other people, focusing on the right things, educating yourself, become powerful, become strong. So that's what I started doing. And I said, once I get to a situation where I can happen, I'm going to fix that problem. So I went through that experience. The company shut down. I went to another one, a branch manager position. They paid me a salary. I was super excited about that. Finally had like some steady income, got 2 paychecks, and the company went bankrupt. Lost all my money. Didn't get any of my paychecks. I made all those calls, all those sales, everything, and I was still trying to maintain my license. Man, that was tough. I'm not gonna lie. There was a lot that goes into that story. I mean, there was times I was walking from the grocery store, probably like 3 miles to carry my groceries. Bag broke, groceries fell over the ground. This poor soccer mom pulls up in her van. She's like, "You need some help, sweetie?" I'm like, No, I got it. God forbid if I accept help from anybody. So I didn't want to do that. Just little tidbits. And so after that happened, I got with another mortgage company and got in with a good team, good round of people. And then a year later, I was making 6-7 figures plus. Back in it again, changed my life, paid off all my debt. Was a lot smarter with my money this time. Managed it correctly. Read all my books. Continued to read. Met my high school crush. Ended up moving from North Carolina to Florida, and then got down here and started my business. Well, 3 of my businesses, and had my 2-year-old daughter. That's kind of pretty much the catch from up to that point. What really got the project started? I didn't want to come to Florida. I'm not going to lie. I was trying to get away from here, and I wanted to live in different places, but girls. So I came back and started from scratch again. I started my mortgage company. It's an all-veteran owned and operated mortgage company that hires military and only works with military. It's a specific niche. So the mortgage business is boring, really boring. And after doing it for 15 years and writing so many loans, you got to remember, like at 23, I was managing $250 million without a college education. By the time I was 26, I was managing probably multi-billions within that time period without a college education. I was one of the top in the nation. I was doing a lot without having any kind of formal education behind that. And I think I don't give enough credit to that. To come from the Marine Corps with nothing, growing up the way that I did, to be able to manage a multi-billion-dollar company and be in charge of at least $250 to $500 million worth of business annually and monthly. I don't really process that as much, I think, that I should. And when I got down to Florida, I was working for a bank at the time, and they wanted to help veterans, but it's just the same cliche BS of, we're going to play on the patriotic, wave the flag veteran thing. We're going to get out and get somebody in a picture that's not a veteran, that has really long hair, and you're like, how's that guy even in the military? These very canned Google pictures, and they said, well, we want you to run our veteran division, and here's what we're going to do, and we're going to charge the veterans this. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Government loans are the most profitable loans. Why don't we cut the margins in half and give it to the veterans, and then we'll grab more market share, right? Like 3 and 1 for referral, and we'll actually help people. Like, I don't know, that sounds like a pretty genius model to me. And they're like, no, that's not going to work. So I kind of had that Jerry Maguire moment. I grabbed my fishbowl and my suitcase and said, who's coming with me? But nobody came with me, especially not like a girl. So I went back home, talked to my fiance, and she said, well, we're going to move to Florida. So went down to Florida. I had to start my business from scratch out of an IT closet, small little IT closet. We didn't really have a whole lot of money at the time. There's a whole lot more that goes to that, but for the most part, I built the business from scratch, and we went on with a specific mission statement. We called it Booyah, which is unique in the mortgage business because it's all financial uppity. We did it because it speaks to military. I like it when people say, oh, that doesn't make any sense to call a mortgage company, or why would you call it that? Because I know they're not military. And then I automatically know that I don't want to work with them. So it speaks our language, which is not the wave the patriotic flag. It's that dark, funny humor of the camaraderie and the relationship that we have. And I wanted to create a company that people can come work for and make great money and help a lot of people. So we waived all the fees. We didn't charge any fees. We cut the margins in half, and we ran it a model where it would just be market share grab. We would just go out and touch as many people as possible. And I became a true entrepreneur at that time point. The struggles of that and experiences, and realized the difference between being an entrepreneur and a manager, and how I'm better at one than the other. So the reason why I tell that part of the story is because while I was going through that, I worked with a real estate agent up in Panama City. And she was telling me a story about a gentleman named Mr. Mike. Mr. Mike had his leg amputated due to the fact that he didn't have transportation to and from the VA hospital. And here's the crazy thing about it, is that from there they had to walk 8 to 15 miles to take a shuttle bus that takes them another 2 hours to the Pensacola VA, right? And that like baffled me, right? Because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So these guys are having to sleep on park benches, right? Because 8 to 15 miles is a long ways. And then they'll miss the appointments because the shuttle bus will leave, and it'll take 3 to 6 months for the VA to get another appointment. So they don't have accessibility as well. They didn't have accessibility as well. So she told me that story, and I kind of went back, and so I said, all right, well, I don't know, what are we going to do? And so I formed our nonprofit, Booyah Veteran Bus Project. And the only thing I can think of is I ran it like a business, not realizing that it's actually like a business, and I'm still learning, is that we have to market it. So we developed and built that with kind of a 3-phase mission. The first mission was to bring awareness to it. And there's a lot of people doing that, jumping on the bandwagon, which is great. I love it. It's awesome. There's a lot of people out there helping the homeless vets. So we wanted to do it with a hike. Last quarter, me and 2 other great friends of mine that supported me and did a tremendous amount of work on the project. I mean, I always say, look, you got to stand on the shoulders of giants. As much as I would love to sit here, it'd probably take me 3 hours to talk about all the people that have supported me during that time. But ultimately, they got behind it, and we hiked 400 miles from Lake Nona to Panama City, and that was an interesting hike. We finished up, and I just thought to myself, typical Shane, it's got to be 10 times more. We got to help more. We got to do more. We got to make a bigger impact. We've got to get more word out there. Let's go across America. Nobody wanted to join me on that one. So independently, I'll be walking, by myself. Covering over 3,047 miles across the United States of America to raise awareness. Speaking in over 20 cities, handing out over 10,000 veteran hygiene kits. And I partnered with a local nonprofit, Clean the World, that's a global enterprise that takes soap from hotels that gets thrown away over 1 million bars a day and resanitizes it and gives it back to those who need it in third world countries and as well as our country. And we partner because it goes well, because the third phase is to create a mobile hygiene, well, I'm sorry, the second phase is to create a mobile hygiene unit. So we want to take a semi-truck or a bus and convert it into mobile showers, bathroom, and laundry facilities for the homeless vets. So we did that, and I got on the veteran side, or the homeless side, and then I guess I just kind of started looking at it more, saying, how did these guys get here? You know, I don't understand. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, what's happening? I started reevaluating a lot of organizations and asking them questions, and it started to be more about drinking and smoking and partying than really establishing a ground and a good executive summary to fix the problem. And then I started realizing, well, wait a minute, it's not civilian population's fault, it's the veteran community's fault. And let me tell you why. So when you're in the military, you don't have as many problems because you have that camaraderie. You have that unified front, right? And we're held accountable. So assuming when we get out, we're not really held accountable as much. You know, we want to be free of what we thought was a bad thing, only to later on go, man, I wish we were back in again. We need to accept more responsibility for our actions, because life is going to hit you. Personally, I think we're way more prepared. We're taught to overcome any potential obstacle that could be life-threatening. I mean, we train on it every day. Civilian world should be easy. An interview should be easy. To be successful should be easy, easier. You know, there should be more military veterans out there unifying together to help each other versus complaining about the system isn't helping us. See, our job is to continue to serve. I think we forget that. The uniform, though I can't wear it anymore, still is here, right? Sacrifice our own free will so that others can have theirs. So it's our job and our duty to exceed, because we're looked at and respected, right? Like, people look at us from a military standpoint and say, wow, you're a Marine. Wow, you're a soldier. Wow, you're a sailor. You know, young kids look at us. Do you want them looking at an athlete or a singer or a rapper going, wow, what are they doing with life? We are it. And it is our responsibility to continue to uphold that image the right way, to carry ourselves a certain way, to stand up proud with our chest out and our head up, and to say no matter what obstacle hits us, we will continue to push forward, and that we will join together. So that's really my message across the country as I go through that, is to say, look, let's stop crying about it and find a way to fix it. Let's not saying that someone else is going to fix it for us, no political figure or anything of that nature. It doesn't matter. Our objective is to bond together like we did in the military. So that's why I created that project. And then the third phase is really creating an entrepreneurial program. You know, I do a lot of speaking, and one of the statistics that I throw out is in the 1980s, over 60% of the S&P 500 CEOs were veterans, and whereas now it's less than 8%. You know, and when I think about that, it blows my mind, going, we need more successful veterans. We need them to be entrepreneurs. So I'm creating the 14-week program. It's just a lot like boot camp, PT, health, mentality, everything, all day, every day, putting them back into business. And look, this isn't just some chop shop idea. This is the idea behind it, that when they get out, their business is up and running, buddy. I'm talking about tax returns already prepped and prepped, the corporation's set together, their marketing platform set together, their clothes, everything they need with their business. So when they go back into their respective community, they're fired, wired, and inspired, ready to go. I mean, it's plug and play versus, hey, let me write a resume, good luck. You know, no, in the military, when you get ready to jump out the plane, if you don't go, there's called a size 11 boot that helps you. It's really cool. It goes right in the mid portion of your back. It's somewhat abrupt, and then you go out the plane, and you don't have to second guess yourself. So our model is kind of the same way. Like, if you don't want to get out there, we've got this wonderful program called the size 11 boot. We're going to put it right in your back for you. We're going to hook you up, and we're going to push you right out the plane, so that way you can become successful. And that's just kind of a snapshot of how the project was built and developed.